I don't think God wants people to be poor. And today in the world, America especially, is this gap between the rich and everybody else. And I know the game of the rich. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. All over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that, most people know that. But the way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not. Because poverty hurts. I mean, I don't like it. And I don't like that our academic system's so corrupt. You know, we know the banking system's corrupt. We know politics is corrupt, but academics is just as corrupt. First of all, let's go back to what is financial education? It's not get a job, work hard, save money, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. That's not it. You know, money is, the financial industry is two things, debt and taxes. Debt and taxes, and that's where fake starts. 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the US dollar became debt. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that.
All taught that as kids.
Yeah, because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. You know, Japan still has zero interest rate policy. And the Japanese are the biggest savers in the world. And I'm Japanese, I'm 4th generation. They're not too bright.
Right.
Why do you keep saving when they're printing it? You know, when I'm in Japan, that's what I mean by fear. They're so afraid because the Japanese, they're very good culture, but they do as they're told. So what happens to the average person in a financial crash, they don't know what to do. And right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. You know, the purchasing power of the yen, the euro, the rupiah, all going down. And people are working harder and harder and harder, and the central banks of the world are printing more money. The rich don't work for money. Don't you touch that stuff. So why did they take dollar off the gold standard? And what does this mean? What don't we know? So what that meant was in 781, they could print as much money as they wanted. So as the economy of the United States worsened, you know, the deficit, trade deficit was going up, they could print and print and print and print. The people that are being screwed today are the poor and middle class because they work for money. You know, the banker friends, they're not working for money.
They have money working for them.
Yep.
Right.
Very big difference in mentality here.
And the backstory for people, your dad was the poor dad.
Right.
PhD.
Stanford, Northwestern, University of Chicago, the head of education for the state of Hawaii, candidate for lieutenant governor of Hawaii, as a Republican of all things. They know nothing about money, and they teach our kids. So my way of teaching is to first put doubt in your brain, to challenge your belief systems. And then maybe you can choose new beliefs or keep up with old beliefs. Would I never need a paycheck again? Because as long as you need a paycheck, be it from an employer or like my poor dad, he was so afraid of losing his government pension. So my old man kind of got fired. He lost his pension. It was the most frightening thing in the world to him. He had no pension. Then it was Social Security, which is even worse. So that's why my goal when I was about your age, a little older, around 25, I said, my goal is to never need a paycheck again from anybody, even the government. I don't want any Medicare, Social Security. As you know, the rules are always written for the rich, okay? I didn't make the rules. You can get angry at me, but these are the rules. The rich make the rules. The goal. So what I work for, number one, is I'm an entrepreneur. I want businesses. I have multiple businesses. Next is real estate. And real estate is good for many things which we'll go into, but number one is debt. I use a lot of debt to buy real estate and I pay no taxes. That's the relationship there. The next is paper, and that's savings, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and that stuff. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't save money. I don't have any of that. But this is what most people have: go to school, get a job, get a 401k, and save money. Loser. Okay. I'm doing that just to upset you guys, because maybe you'll start to think. Because I didn't make the rules, I'm just telling you these are the rules. These people pay the highest taxes, and they work the hardest. And the last are commodities. So commodities are, number one is gold, silver, oil, land, water, food. So this is what I work for. When I left school, rather than working for a paycheck and working for money, my education had to go beyond getting a job, which I had a good job. But I now had to start, when I left school, about your age, the thing I focused on first actually was commodities. So back in 1972, I started buying gold. So I started with gold, but actually the next thing was actually oil, because I went to school to be a tanker officer, driving ships for Standard Oil. So I understand oil. So my wife and I don't own Standard Oil or Chevron or Exxon. We own oil wells. Again, taxes. You get no tax breaks for owning paper oil, huge tax breaks for owning real oil. And then I went into real estate. Why? Because I can use debt to buy real estate. And because I use debt, I pay no taxes. And then third, I started my business, my first real business. I had many businesses as a kid, but my first real business was a nylon and Velcro surfer wallet business. And I went worldwide right away. The trouble is I was an idiot, and the business went up and the business came down. What kept me alive was this and this. Okay. So you may say, well, aren't you working for money? But we'll go into that next. I don't want what's called a paycheck. I want cash flow. So that's what I mean by the rich don't work for money. You want cash flow that pays very little taxes, and I can use lots of debt over here. The average person who went to school, their biggest liability they have is student loans, of course. Then you get out and you try and buy a house, and you call it an asset when it's really a liability. Why? Because the cash is flowing that way. Your house costs you money. You rent a house, still costs you money. Okay? Then you have to have a nice car. I had one of those. So the problem with most young people is they go to school to get that job, then a lot of them have student loan debt, then they try and get married and buy a house, have a car, and then they have credit card debt, but they never have the chance to come over here. If they do any investing in America, it's a 401k, which I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Now, you should, but I don't, because I don't have to. Because I went to school for here, and people who don't go to school should be here. This is a 401k, IRA, ETFs, and that stuff. Paper, savings. I don't touch that stuff, and we'll go into that later on. Okay. So when I say rich don't work for money, I never wanted to be dependent on a paycheck, either from an employer or the government. I wanted to be a free human being.